want to address something and dispel one myth that people seem to have about a paperless classroom. 100% paperless does not mean 100% digital. Let me repeat that. Just because you eliminate the wastefulness of using paper in a classroom does not mean you're doing everything in a computer. Making that assumption means you assume that currently every single activity you do in a classroom is done on paper. If that's true, I feel bad for you, and especially for your students. Most classes, thankfully, involve more than just reading books, writing on paper, and filling out worksheets, which is a good thing because there aren't too many jobs out there that are comprised of simply reading books and filling out papers.
Hey, come on, cut it out! Come on, come on!
What? I'm just trying to erase a typo.
No, you're acting like you don't know how a modern office works.
No, authentic learning requires more tasks than what you can do on a printed page. There's a need for discussions, debates, speeches, skits, science labs, and experiments, hands-on learning. This is true whether you're using paper or not. None of those things requires paper. The fact of the matter is that modern technology can bring us closer to authentic learning than ever before. But even though we can do all of the old paper tasks on a computer now, that doesn't mean we can do everything on a computer. The reality is that we live in the real world, not a virtual world, and we have to remember that in our classrooms. As much as modern technology can provide us with wonderful simulations and virtual experiences, they don't replace the real thing. Anybody who's visited the Grand Canyon will be able to relate to what I'm saying. You can see amazing photographs of the Grand Canyon. We can even visit a 3D representation in Google Earth, seeing the geological formations and enhancing it with immersive 360-degree panoramic photography. But it doesn't hold a candle to actually standing there at the edge of the vast chasm that seems to go on forever, letting you know just how small you are in the universe and just how powerful the forces of nature are. We could look up the Grand Canyon's weather and climate online and get an idea of how hot and dry it is in the summer. But that's nothing like hiking down the endless switchbacks through the sparsely vegetated landscape in the hot, dry afternoon, seeing small critters who have adopted to the harsh environment scamper into the shade and shelter of desert brush. Nothing captures the senses and the imagination like actually seeing and experiencing things in person. It may be tempting to send a kid to a website or watch a YouTube video showing a science concept or experiment, but I think there's something in us that can't break through the suspension of disbelief. Deep down, we know things on a screen aren't reality. If you don't believe me, test this theory out for yourself. Show your students a science experiment on YouTube, and then replicate the same experiment in real life in front of them. I guarantee you'll get more oohs and ahs from the real thing. This is a big reason I've spent way more money than I should, out of my own pocket, to buy things like actual cool scientific demonstration objects, such as Aerogel, the least dense solid on Earth, and a surprising metallic element that I'm going to use in a surprise lesson for my students. Sorry, I can't give away the secret because my students have probably found this video. It's also why I've been investing in antiquities and artifacts on eBay over the past year. Our 6th grade social studies curriculum is all about ancient civilizations, and sure, you can see pictures of the art and tools those cultures used in our textbooks, or in our case, an ebook, but that doesn't truly show you what it's like in reality. It doesn't give you a sense of the size of it, the material, the durability or fragility, etc. For that reason, I'm creating a small Calistoga Antiquities Museum exhibit of artifacts from thousands of years ago, most of them real and authentic, some of them replicas of artifacts that demonstrate important milestones and evolutions in the history of human culture. Students will have an opportunity to investigate and explore these archaeological finds and use authentic processes of research and deduction to understand more about the cultures from which they came. For example, one activity we recently did involved students investigating a mystery artifact, an ancient cylinder seal, but where did it come from and what purpose did it serve? This activity involved visual analysis, measurements and mathematical calculations, and an art simulation in which students actually rolled out an impression using these replicas of real artifacts. All of this was further enhanced and supported by use of technology, documenting the artifact and doing online research to deduce information based on the clues. But even though this project was 100% paperless, it was not 100% digital. Next week, we will be exploring the mummification process of ancient Egypt by actually making a mummy. We will be desiccating Cornish game hens, going through the same process and ritual that ancient Egyptians used to get a deeper understanding of both their beliefs and the science behind it. Just like the Mesopotamian cylinder seal activity, we'll be using technology to enhance, not replace, the experience. We will learn the mummification process through interactive simulations, and will document and share the experience with the world through Google Presentations and Google Sites web portfolios. We should also recognize that sometimes real and authentic means we should be using modern technology. Let's take a look at some examples. So let's consider models and dioramas. For a long time, schools and teachers have had students create dioramas out of cardboard and construction paper, or models out of sugar cubes and popsicle sticks. We should be asking ourselves, why? What is the end goal here? If the goal is to physically represent a scene or object in 3D, couldn't we do so using the authentic tools that people are actually using in modern society to do such a thing? I don't know of anybody who creates models out of sugar cubes and popsicle sticks for a living, but I do know a few industrial designers and others who create 3D models using CAD software. And now we can even print those precise and authentic models using inexpensive 3D printers. So wouldn't that be a more real and authentic activity for our students to be doing? Manipulatives. When we talk about manipulatives, we're really talking about another form of model, a concrete visual tool to model abstract ideas. I fail to see how moving some flat two-dimensional objects, say tangrams or fraction bars, around on a table with your finger works any differently than moving those same flat representations around on a tablet with your finger. So this means a vast amount of resources and time can be saved by using virtual manipulatives. What about speeches and performances? I'm as much of a fan as anybody for the live theater, but the fact remains that you can reach a much larger audience by recording performances, whether that means simply pressing record on a speech and sharing the talk online, or creating a fully produced movie. Is it better for students to have an audience comprised only of a couple dozen peers, or an audience comprised of the entire world? Which one better represents the reality they will be facing when they graduate? Same can be said for doing paper artwork or worksheets. What is the end goal? Aren't these just symbols or simulations themselves? Paper products are not reality. They're used to write down words or print pictures that represent reality. There are some cases where computers may not be the best way to do this. For example, I wanted my students to get a feel for the authentic tools and techniques used by early humans to create cave art. So I gave them charcoal, had them use roughly textured paper to simulate rock, and had them use blow pens to do hand outlines with blown pigment like the cavemen did. These are tasks I couldn't have done with a computer. However, if the end goal is to create a diagram or illustration, couldn't we have students do that using the technology that modern graphic designers and illustrators use? This is not to say that traditional art media have gone away, but you'd be surprised just how much is now done on computers, even for art forms that used to be done completely on paper. Even traditional media and techniques can be simulated with art software, while saving a lot of time and money in the process, and avoiding the headaches of buying, storing, cleaning up, or otherwise managing art supplies. My students recently learned pointillism while making still lifes, and we did it the same way in our tablet's Fresh Paint app that we could have done it with markers or colored pencils on a piece of paper. So as you can see, authentic learning can also mean using the real tools people use in modern society to solve problems. And many times that means using the computer. Other times, authentic tasks simply aren't possible due to the logistics of time, money, or resource constraints. In those scenarios where you simply can't take a field trip, a virtual field trip is the next best thing. If you don't have the budget, materials, or time to do an actual science lab, a virtual simulation is the next best thing. I would say that the priority order of value when doing educational tasks is this. 1, the best is going to be the real or authentic. 2, the next best thing is interactive simulations or virtual reality. Behind that would be multimedia presentations, such as videos, which you've had for a long time in schools. Going further down the list would be static presentations, meaning photos, words, things printed on paper, or textbooks. And worst of all, obviously, would be doing nothing at all. Simulations and virtual experiences can be great surrogates when the real thing is too costly or difficult to achieve, but there's no replacement for the real thing. So I encourage you to bring the real into your classroom, and when you can't, use modern technology, not boring old paper, to get your students as close to reality as you can get.